Already heard a lot about zero-knowledge proofs, but zero-knowledge cryptography is what makes Tornado Cash novel. Privacy pools, which we will dive into in the next session, is the idea, which we've touched on a little bit already, that it's possible to use these same type of tools, zero-knowledge proofs, to keep known bad actors from accessing systems that feature Tornado Cash-like privacy. To talk about that with me, please welcome Zach Kolf and Amin Soleimani from Oxbow. Thank you guys so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So we're going to dive into Oxbow, which is one of the most cutting edge, and I do not use that cliche lightly, privacy projects out there. But I'm going to start by asking Amin a few questions about privacy pools, which is at least one of the big ideas behind Oxbow. So, Amin, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to work on privacy pools and sort of how that led to Oxbow?
Sure. Hello. Good morning.
There we go.
Amin Soleimani. I have been an Ethereum software engineer for, close to 8 years now. We were basically jealous of Zcash in 2018 or 19, and we didn't think it made a lot of sense for all of our transactions on Ethereum to be public, and every time you pay somebody, they see your whole transaction history. And if you really want privacy, you basically run your money through Coinbase, but then that's like easily susceptible to bribing. You call up their support engineer, give me $1,000 for this guy's transaction history. And we saw that Zcash was incredible technology and wanted to have that same sort of privacy for ourselves on Ethereum. And so we implemented the second zero-knowledge proof system on the planet, and that was called Tornado Cash. When I say we implemented it, my role in this is that I was the sort of founder, summoner of this thing called Moloch DAO, which is a sort of punk rock branded nonprofit to fund Ethereum open source projects. Tornado Cash was one of them. We gave them a bunch of grant funding to build an open source privacy system. All of this is public record. I'm not saying anything here that I haven't said before, in case you're wondering. Things went sideways when North Korea hacked a video game protocol for $500 million. Axie Infinity don't ask me why they had $500 million, but then it became a big problem because they started putting the money into Tornado Cash, and that resulted in eventually US sanctions and legal action against Roman Storm and Alexei Pertsev. So this actually all played out in Las Vegas at ZCon 2, I think, years ago. And on the first day, I remember going around being like, Tornado Cash is so cool, blah, blah, blah. And the day after, in the morning, we saw that it got sanctioned. And much like today, Peter Valkenburg actually got up and gave a speech about it and talked about, how Coin Center could help. And Zuko, who I, appreciate his contributions to cryptography too, is a complete hypocrite because in this matter, he went out and said, hey, Zcash isn't used for any crime. But then later, when we released the privacy pools paper, he was like, this is terrible, you shouldn't do this. And basically the whole idea of privacy pools is that we can cryptographically demonstrate the same thing. So after the sanctions, it was kind of demoralized. We were like, how are we going to do this in a way that is decentralized, in a way where not a single admin has total control of the system, can steal everybody's money, put everybody's funds at risk. And it was on I think Vitalik had a podcast with Brian, the CEO of Coinbase, and he explained that you can actually use zero-knowledge proofs to prove that you are not some of the people who deposit into the system. And so when you withdraw from the system, you provide a proof that it says, I'm not telling you who I am, but I'm telling you I'm not those guys. And for a system like Ethereum, that actually works because when somebody hacks a DeFi protocol, we see all the money on the chain. And so at the very least, we can prove that we are not associated with those funds. And so I, once again, funded a prototype through Moloch DAO, and we built this out. And after we demoed this at ETH Denver last year, I got in touch with a professor at the University of Basel in Switzerland named Fabian Schaar. First, he ignored me because I'm, some like weird anarchist on Twitter or something. But eventually, he responded to my DMs and brought Vitalik into a call with him, and he had the idea. We were trying to basically recruit him. So they wrote a great paper about Tornado Cash and why it's, not only. They saw the value of privacy for blockchains, and they saw Tornado Cash as something that could be critical infrastructure for humanity, and for financial systems in general. And Tornado Cash had a compliance tool, which is not brought up enough, where you could, as an individual, prove which deposit belonged to you. So you could go to the bank and be like, this was me. Basically, the paper that he wrote suggested for policy mandating the use of that compliance tool for banks and financial institutions. So it's like, you can use Tornado Cash to protect your privacy because we think privacy is a good thing, but you have to present this proof to some sort of financial institution that says, this is who I am. But that ultimately didn't matter to the government when they sanctioned the program and threw the developers in prison. What we realized is that if this is the person making policy recommendations, we want to get in touch with them because we don't want the policies to be created without knowing what we know now, which was that you can do this sort of public dissociations. I call them dissociation proofs, membership proofs, sort of same idea. And that way, it's a lot easier to demonstrate that you are not the bad guys in a public way that doesn't require basically all the financial institutions to have a data sharing system where they say, oh, you check that guy, I check this guy, they're all good. And so after we talked to Fabian, he was interested in writing the paper, and he suggested it, and they were kind enough to include me as a co-author. I made some diagrams and came up with some terminology. Vitalik wrote the whole paper in a week, or half of it, and these guys were shocked. They thought he was like some figurehead. He's just going to bless it or something. It's not Vitalik. So we published this paper, and now Zach and I have started this company, Oxbow, to basically implement this protocol. Oxbow is a company that monitors privacy systems in order to determine, maintain a whitelist of people we think are legitimate users, and essentially a blacklist of people that we think are criminal users, and keep them separated so that the good guys can have privacy, but only amongst themselves. And I think that this is a really important thing to demonstrate because a lot of the arguments against these systems are that they're only used for criminals. This came up at Alexi's trial in the Netherlands, where the court said there is no positive use case for something like Tornado Cash. Vitalik's, sending money to Ukraine, I guess, doesn't count. I wonder how many people, who regulate this stuff are also heroes like Vitalik and send money to Ukraine. I don't think it's very many. And this stuff is important to us also because, for example, I help participate in Iranian activism. I have a nonprofit called Iran Unchained. Why? Because people tried to send money legally. There's sanctions, obviously, but there's exemptions to those sanctions. If you have an NGO, you can send up to 500 grand a year through, for humanitarian aid, internet infrastructure. These things are exempt. And so, but things like GoFundMe, we're shutting down these fundraisers despite these exemptions because they don't want to deal with the compliance overhead. And so it's a matter of over-compliance. And so we basically, use cryptographic systems to use cryptocurrency to send it without touching banks. But I have to worry about the person on the other end of that being discovered by their own government and arrested. And so the having good private systems is, I think, really important. I think that we should do what we can to build these systems within the boundaries of the law, and also try to inform the policy to make good laws. And I believe America's a good place to do it because the Fourth Amendment, in theory, protects us against illegal search and seizure.
Thank you for that. Really interesting how this company grew directly out of the Tornado Cash saga. I'm going to turn to Zach. Interested sort of how you learned about the privacy pools idea and how you came to start working with Amin, and what was it? What is it that it has inspired you to think that this could be a company?
Yeah, sure. I think I met Amin a while back. We did Moloch DAO together, and so out of that came Tornado Cash. So I've kind of seen the whole evolution of everything and how it all works and came to fruition. So I think Oxbow is kind of like a response to the need for compliance and regulation within crypto. I don't think that anybody is trying to like break the law or like fund. I mean, I'm sure there are people out there that are using it illicitly, but I mean, the people that aren't need a framework and a methodology to interact within these systems without being afraid of going to prison. So I think that's kind of the response.
And so Oxbow makes, I think Amin referred to association proofs, association sets. Oxbow makes association sets.
ASP.
Right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, association set provider.
What exactly is an association set, and how do you create one?
Yeah, so it's like a group of people or individuals, organizations that provide lists of people that they want to interact with and ensure that those lists don't have sanction addresses or entities. It's kind of like a consensual way to opt in to transact. I mean, that can be used for consortiums. I mean, there's a lot of institutional use cases there, and that's where I think like the value comes because, I mean, there's going to have to be like Bank Secrecy Act, for example. If an institution wants to interact with another one, they need to conform to certain regulations. And I mean, that's essentially privacy. And that's kind of lacking right now in terms of the broader crypto space.
So just to make this a little bit more concrete, is there maybe a real world example? It could be something that you make up, hypothetical, to explain how you make a selection, make a decision as to who is included in an association set, and then sort of once that association set is created, then how does it get used in practice?
Yeah, so I'm having a private dinner and I want everyone to pay me for that dinner. So I'm going to create an association set. I don't want people to know who's coming to that dinner necessarily, and I don't want people to know how much they're spending, like each other, they're like one another's tabs. And so I generate that ASP, that association set rather, and everybody can opt into that.
Interesting. What are some of the technical challenges or questions around the creation of an association set that are still that Oxbow and others are still wrestling with? I know because sometimes we don't know, for example, right off the bat that that there's a bad actor out there, for example.
Yeah, I think probably identifying making sure that there's no retroactive involvement. What happens if you're not a criminal today, right? What if you go out and commit a crime tomorrow? How do we revoke that effectively while still maintaining privacy? I think that's probably one issue. I mean, but there's not really much legal framework at all for anything, even outside of crypto, that can account for that.
Right, I was going to ask about that. I mean, to what extent is a new legal framework necessary for Oxbow and service providers like this to thrive?
I think it's kind of just like proving intent and being able to say you're not a bad guy.
What happens if someone is included in a set mistakenly? I'm not sure if that's a possibility or if someone's excluded.
Yeah, you could just revoke that ASP, that association set rather.
Is there any kind of legal uncertainty or questions around that right now?
I'm not a lawyer.
That's a good answer. I think for our association sets, just like make it a little more concrete. Like, the way it works is basically process of elimination, right? So if you have 6 people at your dinner party, one of them turns out to be a crook or a thief or something, the other 5 can prove that they are on the list of the 5 of them, and the 6th person can't. And so when they withdraw, they're only associated with themselves. And then the problem of revocation, like to make it more concrete, it's like if you put the money in the privacy pool and we accept it, and then you turn around and send all your money to Hamas, we're going to take your deposit out of the privacy pool, not out of the pool itself, because we don't have custody or control of the smart contract or the funds, but we're going to remove that deposit from the association set so that everybody else from that point forward isn't associated with that deposit. And further, if people who have already withdrawn based on the association set that did include you choose to or are invited to by law enforcement, they can prove against the new set, which excludes the person who we took off.
Question for both of you, or whoever wants to jump on it. When you explain that, and when you explain what Oxbow does to policymakers and explain association sets to policymakers, what kind of reactions do you get? Do at least some of them buy sort of the argument that traditional KYC is not going to work in these systems, and that there needs to be a different way?
Yeah, I think most response has been positive. I haven't personally encountered any negative response, but I'm assuming I probably will at some point.
The Swiss are very excited about it. The Swiss understand privacy. They're into it, and for Americans, if you actually want to build one of these systems and it has this sort of relayer, the relayer doesn't have custody of the money, but according to the judge in the Tornado Cash case, that's still enough to be considered a money services business. So if you want to be operating in this type of system as an American business, you're going to need to KYC people both in and out, as the rules are for in America. And that's not actually a good privacy system, right? Like it's almost the same as running your money through Coinbase, because we have to maintain all these records. And I think basically the way that regulators operate is that they don't want to change things until they're compelled to. So I actually think there needs to be way more hacks from China or whatever, leak all the KYC data, demonstrate, like many people said before, that this is actually a national security concern. And then they will realize that we cannot protect all Americans from having their data leaked through these hacks. And so it should be Americans that have the right to defend themselves by using privacy tools. I think that's the way that this is going to work. If you remember, I mean, some of the people here were part of the cryptography wars the first time around. The government banned encryption altogether. They said it's a munition. This is a weapon, because I mean, Alan Turing won World War II because of cracking the German codes. They were like, this is really important. And so the cases for this are kind of funny, right? It's like a professor of computer science gave a lecture about cryptography and then was arrested because he had a foreign exchange student in his class. And they said, you're exporting munitions to foreign agents. And so they tried to ban encryption until they realized that it was basically futile. The nerds took them to court. They wrote programs. They exported the cryptographic protocols on T-shirts. And I think the government tried to make this like Clipper chip or something, and the nerds basically broke it in like a day or two. And then they gave up. And then they mandated cryptography. And now every government website has HTTPS encryption, and it's very odd if you don't. And so I actually think that the evolution will go the same way, where first they fight us, and then eventually we win, but not. And our goal through this process is to try and minimize the human cost. It's one thing to overextend and like sanction Tornado Cash. We're like, hello, we'd like you to regulate things. Please make the rules explicit. And they sanction Tornado Cash. We're like, well, I guess that counts as regulating, kind of. It's an extreme form of regulation. But the part that I don't accept is throwing my friends in jail. They were not criminals. They were not associated with criminals. They were not doing any crimes. The rules for the money services businesses were not clear. That the DOJ and FinCEN have totally different interpretations of this, and so we're really hoping that we can at least help out the people who are the innovators in this, in this process.
At least obtain regulatory clarity. It's kind of hard to work in the dark. Is
the U.S. regulatory environment in particular is often criticized by the industry. Do either of you have any thoughts on that? Does it seem like it might be easier to operate in other jurisdictions? Is there anything that's going on here that's making it particularly difficult for you?
I think it's probably just a lack of clear and concise guidelines. And yeah, it is easier to work in other jurisdictions, but I'm American and I'm not going to move to another country to do my job. I mean, I served in the military, I went to Iraq, I worked in cryptography there, doing pretty much the exact same thing I'm doing now, except now somehow what I'm doing is worth more money. Wasn't getting paid much then, but you know, here I am.
Thank you for your service. There's another sort of angle to this, which is there can be kind of this perception that this is, I guess, to use a slur, a crypto bro. This is just for crypto bros. But privacy also means confidentiality, and sophisticated investors, mainstream financial institutions are interested in confidentiality. So has Oxbow gotten traction in that sense with traditional financial institutions, and kind of how excited are folks in that space?
Yeah, so far pretty cool. We have some preliminary like proof of concept work with a couple financial institutions right now. I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, this is like TLS for finance, and it's just a natural evolution, like Amin was saying.
Yeah, there's obviously financial institutions that are like, we want to do DeFi on the chain, but we don't want our competitors knowing what we're doing. How do we have privacy, right? And I think, you know, it is also actually for your everyday person, right? I mean, some people put their Venmo on public. I don't know about you guys, I don't, but typically we make fun of these people. And I think for the vast majority of people who don't want to have their Venmo on public, this is how you do it, right?
Or your bank account balance.
Yeah, you're like, why would I advertise this? Every time you make a transaction, they're like, what did you spend your money on? Every time you make a payment to someone, you're like, how much money are you making?
Final question, and then we may have some time for a question or two from the audience, depending on where we are at the end of this. But how does the privacy pools idea continue to evolve from this point? Is there necessary additional infrastructure? Are there complementary tools in development? What's the best way to think about how this technology and these systems are evolving?
So privacy pools, sort of the broad concept of using a protocol and then having, you know, distinct pools that people can prove against for, you know, different categories of users. You know, we are also, Oxbow is partnering with other privacy protocols so that we monitor their systems, we build lists for their systems, and allow their users to dissociate from other, you know, potentially illicit users on their platforms. So we have our sort of B2B strategy there. We also want to build, you know, systems for consortiums of banks, for example. Like today, you know, really obvious sort of use cases, like if you have money on the chain and you go through an exchange, you can see which exchange it came from because all the exchange addresses are tagged. It's like Kraken 3, Coinbase, you know, hot wallet. And so that gives me very easy insight into, okay, I need to call the guy at Kraken, bribe them to get this you know, wallet information. And that's not great. And so if, you know, 20 exchanges work together and pooled money into the privacy pool first, and they're like, this is a person, you know, our rule is that you must have been KYC'd at one of our exchanges, and then you're allowed into the system. Then when you withdraw, it's like, it could be one of these 20 exchanges that the money came from, and it's a lot harder to invade your privacy that way and compromise the security.
Cool. I think we do have one mic. Do we have a mic? Is there any? I think we have time for one question. Is there a question in the audience for Amin and Zach?
We got a couple.
Maybe two.
He had his hand up first. We'll probably get time for both. There you go.
I can be quick. So for the financial institutions that you're doing proof of concepts with, they understand that to produce the proofs, you're seeing the raw data, you're processing on the raw data. Do they have any interest in you meeting certain credentials, having certain certifications, certain business partnerships in order to kind of trust you with that?
Yeah, so a trend, you'll probably hear it, verified credentials. People are trying to make sort of on-chain representations of like, this is a wallet that was KYC'd by Coinbase, or this is a wallet that was KYC'd by Kraken. And in those cases, it's a lot easier to admit them to a privacy pool. It could be that they come up with their own standard. They have their own separate pool that is just for that. They might trust each other with the data. It's not clear exactly how this will play out. Like, does Kraken need to see all of Coinbase's user data, for this to work? Ideally not. But I don't make the rules.
Well, like with Base, for example, like they use ETH attestation service, so they can just attest that one of these users is KYC'd. So I don't really need to verify exactly who that person is or identify any of their personal information. I just know that I can trust that Coinbase has KYC'd them and that they've made that attestation on chain. So that's interoperable throughout multiple networks.
Thank you. I think we'll end there. Thank you very much, Zach and Amin.
Thank you.
Thank you.